Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the photographer. This is an encounter that occurred just last year in November. Underwater photographer Darren Verbeck was diving off of the coast of Hawaii's Big Island when he saw what he thought was a school of fish. He began to get closer, I mean the whole photographer thing, and as he got closer he started to think that what he was actually seeing was a tiger shark. He continued to get closer, and that's when he said, quote, "I just kept looking at the head. I'm like, that is not a tiger shark." And it got closer and closer, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Darren continued to get closer to the shark and estimated it to be over 15 feet, which is definitely quite large. He explained that the shark was not acting in a threatening way, so he continued to take his photos and shot as much as he could before the massive shark decided to swim away. Experts explained that the shark was likely in the area because of humpback whales, and honestly, I do not want to see the shark that could take down one of those beasts. In our number 9 spot today, we have TODD ENDRIS. TODD ENDRIS is actually a man who was attacked by the same shark 3 different times on August 28, 2007. Todd was near Marina State Park in California when the attacks occurred. The first one didn't do too much damage, but the second one was certainly much worse. He would later go on to say, spoiler alert, he survived these attacks, he would later go on to say that during this second attack, the shark skinned his back, quote, like a banana peel. Okay, Mario Kart just turned into Nightmare on Elm Street. With the third attack, the shark attempted to eat his leg, which was still attached to his body, and this is when his kind of unlikely savior came in. It was actually a group of dolphins that decided to surround Todd, which provided enough of a distraction that he was able to ride a wave back to shore. It is definitely possible that the shark could have, and it may have, eaten one of those rescue dolphins should it choose to. Once Todd was back on shore, despite having lost half of his blood, his friends were able to help him until rescue arrived, and from there, just 6 weeks later, he was back in the water. Sadly, Todd ended up losing his life in September of 2016 from a car crash, but it's important to note that after his attack, before his untimely death, he made it clear he held no grudge against his shark attacker. He said, quote, "We're in his realm, not the other way around." In our number 8 spot today, we have the J-Bay event finals. This shark attack is from 2015 and is one that happened on live TV, but thankfully it turned out much better than it could have. During the finals of the J-Bay event, which again was being broadcast live around the world, a shark got himself a little in over his head when he decided to try and take a bite out of 3-time world surfing champion Mick Fanning. Mick reacted a lot more bravely than I would have and started to fight back against the shark. While this was going on, another pro surfer, Julian Wilson, paddled towards the shark in order to try and help. In the end, the safety teams came out as quickly as possible to rescue the surfers and a photographer who was also out on the water, and everyone was fine, albeit probably a little shaken up. Fights broke out on the internet over whether this was a shark attack or a shark encounter, and I mean, all that really matters is the humans and the shark are all safe at the end of the day. In our number 7 spot today, we have the strange environment. This is a shark encounter that, I'll be honest, it isn't a megalodon, but it is one that is so strange it might just show that maybe we don't really have all the answers to ocean mysteries. Scientists were really surprised and confused when they found hammerhead and silky sharks swimming near an underwater volcano in the South Pacific. This is because the waters around there would be extremely hot, and they would also be really acidic. This is an extreme environment for marine life, and while some species would thrive in this environment, sharks aren't really on that list, hence the confusion and bafflement of the scientists. While this isn't a confirmed megalodon sighting, it is just something that shows us that life under the sea is mysterious and new secrets are revealed to us every day. In our number 6 spot today, we have Watson and the shark. For this one, we are headed all the way back to 1749 with a cabin boy named Brooke Watson. Brooke was swimming in the Havana harbor when he had his encounter with a shark. This one grabbed him by his right foot and dragged him under. The shark got a second chomp on his foot before a rescue boat was able to come and save him. The sailor on the boat managed to get the shark to back off enough that they could get Brooke out of the water. Brooke lost his lower leg, but his life was saved, which is absolutely the most important part. Brooke's story is not over, however, as he went on to become a member of parliament and eventually Lord Mayor of England. He was so proud of himself for not only having survived a shark attack, but then going on to earn this title that he commissioned famous artist John Singleton Copley to create a painting called Watson and the Shark, which detailed his horrifying encounter and probably went on to scare a ton of people at the time. In our number 5 spot today, we have Instagram famous. John Braxton is a man who Instagram is definitely not very happy at, and if his video came up in your feed unsuspectingly, you might also have some words for the guy. John was 27 years old at the time of his shark encounter, and he was spearfishing at the time. During his time time fishing, he had an encounter with a huge shark that ended up taking a massive bite right out of his leg. John was thankfully able to escape the shark and swim to shore, where his partner tied a tourniquet and called 911. When the ambulance arrived, John was likely in shock. I mean, I would be if I even saw a shark beside me, let alone if one bit me. So in this altered state, John took his phone out and started recording a video where he panned down to his terribly injured leg. He of course posted the video to Instagram, who later removed it, but of course not before the entire computer and phone having population got a chance to save it and reshare it at any chance possible. In our number 4 spot today, we have Breach. This is a shark encounter that truthfully I have very little background info on, but the video really speaks for itself. This shark video was recorded in Mossel Bay, and it shows this gigantic shark basically leaping out of the ocean. I mean, come on, imagine. That would be absolutely terrifying. People who are more well versed in shark behavior than I am have explained that this shark, despite how it looks, is actually not doing this to be threatening, and it's not a move that would be done should it be attempting to attack something. I mean, that's not entirely true. It's actually more so used in order to try and catch fast-moving prey like seals. It's relatively rare to capture a shark doing this though, because it takes so much energy for it to propel itself like this. I mean, they can reach 40 miles per hour and fly 10 feet into the air out of the water. That takes some serious strength. In our number 3 spot today, we have Ahmad Hassim. Back in 2006, Ahmad and his brother were assisting lifeguards in Cape Town, South Africa, and to do this, they were helping out running different survival drills. During this one particular drill, the brother was lying in the water, pretending to be someone who needed help, and that is when a huge shark could be seen heading towards this brother that was completely unaware. Ahmad saw this and was so quick thinking he knew that sharks are typically attracted to sound, which I actually didn't know, so there's a little shark trivia fact for ya. So because he knew this, he started splashing around in the water. This worked, and it led to the shark leaving his brother alone, but instead, the shark now set his sights on Ahmad. It ended up grabbing him by his right leg and pulling him underwater. He was able to use his left leg to kick at the shark until it let go of him, but the shark was still able to get away with his leg below the knee. A boat was able to rush him to shore, and help arrived quickly enough to rush him to the hospital and save his life. Ahmad has not let this slow him down in the slightest though. He has gone on to reach not only the 2008 Beijing Paralympic Games, but he won gold at the 2012 London Paralympic Games, which is absolutely incredible. He has also gone on to become a shark advocate, saying that he has, quote, a sense that sharks are in trouble, and who better to speak up for sharks than a shark attack survivor. In our number 2 spot today, we have Rodney Fox. Rodney Fox is a man who was thought of as one of the best spear fishermen in the world. In 1963, he was partaking in the Australian Spearfishing Championships, which were being held just south of Adelaide, when he went through what is widely regarded as one of the worst shark attacks in history. The shark he encountered bit him around the waist, which ended up puncturing his diaphragm, ripping his lungs, and crushing his rib cage. Not only this, but the attack left his organs exposed, so much so that when he finally made it back to shore, those rescuing him had to keep his wetsuit on to ensure that his insides actually stayed on the inside. Despite the fact that Rodney needed at least 4 hours of surgery and about 400 stitches. Like many people who have these sorts of terrifying encounters, rather than shying away from sharks and the water, he leaned in. He actually became an advocate for sharks after this. He created the first underwater shark observatory and helped to dispel the rumors that sharks are bad, crazy, scary animals that we should all fear. In our number 1 spot today, we have Michael Coots. Back in 1997, Michael was surfing near the coast of Hawaii when he had his shark encounter. The shark decided to attack and grabbed Michael by both of his legs. Michael has gone on to explain that once the shark had a hold on him, it began swinging him back and forth like a dog would do with a toy. That is absolutely so vivid and so horrifying to even think about. Michael was able to punch the shark into letting go of him and was able to escape to safety after the scary ordeal. Although he was lucky and happy to be alive, the shark had done enough damage that Michael ended up losing his right leg. Despite this setback, Michael was back in the water just 3 weeks later, already using his prosthetic leg and getting used to surfing with it so he could get right back to what he loves. Michael could be terrified of sharks now and no one would blame him, but it's the exact opposite. He's swam around them and even taken selfies with them since, and has explained how much he respects them, saying, quote, "Sharks are not to be feared, but are incredibly beautiful and extremely important species for the health of our oceans."
Starting off this countdown in no order, we have the MOSASAURUS. This sea creature was alive back during the Cretaceous period. which was 145 to 65 million years ago. It was a massive aquatic lizard that grew to around 58 to 59 feet. In fact, they were at the top of the food chain, eating everything beneath them. This included sharks, reptiles, and even other MOSASAURUS. Yes, they feasted on their own kind. Fossilized remains of this beast were first discovered in the 1700s in the Netherlands. From there, they learned that it inhabited the Atlantic Ocean and adjacent seaways. Fossils have been discovered all around the world though, in North America, South America, Africa, Western Asia, and Antarctica. In our 9th spot today we have Leviathan. Now this dude was in direct competition with the Megalodon. They were around 57 feet in length and weighed around 100,000 pounds. So yeah, they were pretty hefty guys. Not only that, but they had incredibly large teeth. Their teeth reached over a foot in length. This earned them the title of having the largest known biting teeth of any animal. But they died out between 3.6 and 2.6 million years ago. Just like the Meg, these creatures struggled to adapt to climate change, and they suffered losing their primary prey, which was small to medium-sized whales. If this creature was still around today, I couldn't imagine what the ocean would be like. You'd never catch me swimming in it, that's for sure. In our 8th spot today we have the giant oarfish. The oarfish is the world's longest bony fish. They can be up to 56 feet, which is 17 meters in length, and they can weigh about 600 pounds, which is 270 kilograms. They also look pretty weird, like they look like a cross between an eel and a fish, but they have bright silvery skin with bright red spikes running down its back. Back in the 1860s, two men were gathering seaweed on the coast of Bermuda when this creature washed up on the rocks. They immediately got scared and thought it was a nasty sea serpent, so they killed it. Later, it was discovered to only be an oarfish. In our 7th spot we have ICHTHYOSAUR. Between 1976 and 1990, scientists unearthed the largest ichthyosaur tooth ever found. The width of this tooth root was twice as large as any aquatic reptile known. It had a diameter of 60 millimeters, which is 2.4 inches. This makes it the thickest ichthyosaur tooth found so far. Then in 2018, paleontologists discovered a 3-foot jaw segment that belonged to this creature. Then they started to piece together the fossil fragments of this creature and concluded that this animal could have grown to 85 feet in size, bigger than they originally thought this creature was. Now, these creatures were interesting. They roamed the oceans about 200 million years ago and had body shapes kind of similar to dolphins. It's said that they vanished about 25 million years before the mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs. In our 6th spot today we have the SHIPWRECK. Now this is the biggest known ichthyosaur. In fact, to this day, this creature is the largest marine reptile that has yet been found. Now I say yet to be found because the oceans are massive, okay? Who knows what else is out there lurking that we haven't discovered yet? There's still so much to be discovered. Anyways, turns out that these bad boys lived in Canada. Woo, my home country. And they were about 69 feet in length or 21 meters. But some researchers have proposed that they were even bigger, and that's based on their partial fossils. So we really don't know their true size. I mean, it's said that the modern blue whale was the largest animal that ever lived, but paleontologists believe that these guys were even bigger based on their fossil records. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the whale shark. Now don't be fooled, okay? This isn't a mix between a whale and a shark. It's not a whale-shark hybrid. It's not even a whale, okay? But it is a shark. The only reason it's called a whale shark is because of its size. It currently holds many records for size in the animal kingdom. It is one of the largest sharks and largest living non-mammalian creature. And it's been around for at least 28 million years. It is said to be 65 feet in length and it weighs about 75,000 pounds. Now, when you think of sharks, you might think that they love to eat fish, you know? And that when they get a whiff of blood, they'll go crazy. Well, whale sharks aren't even like that at all. In fact, they're filter feeders, meaning that they eat plankton, fish eggs, and kill decaying plants, all that kind of stuff. So these sharks are pretty harmless. In fact, since it is a filter feeder, it has the ability to sift through over 1,500 gallons of water in an hour as part of its feeding ritual. In our 4th spot today, we have LEEDSICHTHYS. The LEEDSICHTHYS lived in the oceans during the Middle Jurassic period. It was all over the place in size. It could grow anywhere from 30 feet to 100 feet. So that's a pretty drastic size difference. But to this day, it is considered the largest ray-finned fish to ever swim on Earth. In fact, they were named after paleontologist Alfred Nicholson Leeds, who made important finds of the remains in 1889. Now, these dudes are pretty weird looking creatures. They look like an old whale mixed with a fish, like it's really strange. They also have long pectoral fins and a tall tail fin, and although they look big and bad, they mainly eat zooplankton. In our third spot today, we have BASILOSAURUS. The BASILOSAURUS, whose name literally means king lizard, lived around 41.3 to 33.9 million years ago. At first, they thought it was a reptile, but after scientists studied it more, they realized that it was indeed a marine mammal. So its name is very misleading because it's actually a whale, but it's weird, like it has a long eel-like body. It also has huge rows of teeth and it chewed its food, whereas whales kinda just swallow stuff whole. It was at the top of the food chain, so it likely fed on sharks and large fish among other marine mammals. This guy measures up to be about 49 to 66 feet in length, and that's 15 to 20 meters. In our second spot, we have the fin whale. The fin whale is said to be the second largest animal to ever live in the entire history of Earth. It was about 85 feet in length, which is 26 meters, and weighed about 80 tons. But even though they are massive, they are not predatory. In fact, they are totally harmless to people. They are filter feeders, so they eat like tiny krill and stuff like that. Like other whales, these had a white underside with a dark backside. They also live all around the world. They live in every ocean except parts of the Arctic where it's just covered in ice, and they can travel great distances while munching on relatively little food. As a result, they can live for nearly 150 years. And in our number one spot today, we have the blue whales. Now it seems hard to believe, but blue whales are significantly larger than megalodons. The largest blue whale weighed about 418,000 pounds, which is more than 200 tons. Average blue whales, on the other hand, weigh a bit more than 100 tons, whereas the megalodon weighed only 50 tons. So they got nothing on the blue whales. Not only that, but even blue whale dwarfs reached 110 feet, which is 34 meters, and weighed about 200 tons. That's more than twice the size of the largest meg. Isn't that crazy? But the meg and the blue whale never met. The earliest fossils of blue whales date back to roughly 1.5 million years ago. That's about a million years after the megalodon is believed to have been around.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the MOSASAURUS. During the Cretaceous period, which spanned about 145.5 to 65.5 million years ago, there was this genus of reptiles called Mosasauruses. These things were absolutely huge aquatic reptiles that roamed throughout the waterways here on Earth. Because of their size, they became apex predators during this time and have been estimated to have grown to about 56 feet. At the time of their existence, it isn't exactly likely that they would have encountered any sharks that are alarmingly large like the megalodon was, but I mean, the Cretaceous period certainly had some other massive creatures that put up some stiff competition. This is of course, like I mentioned, an entire genus, so there are definitely some less threatening species in the mix, but there are some in there who would have given the meg a run for their money should they have existed at the same time. In our number 9 spot today, we have the frilled shark. Okay, regular sharks are of course scary and powerful, but the frilled shark looks extra terrifying because it actually just looks like a full-on monster. The frilled shark is a species of deep sea shark that got its name from the 6 to 7 frilled gills it has on the sides of its snake-like body. This shark can grow up to 1.8 meters or 6 feet long, and its mouth is full of 300 razor-sharp teeth. This shark was one of the first deep-sea species to ever be discovered because how could you possibly miss something that looks like this? But because it makes its home so deep in the ocean, and because of the fact that it cannot withstand the pressure change when brought up closer to the surface, a lot remains a mystery about these guys. What's worse than a shark is a mysterious shark. In our number 8 spot today, we have the HELICOPRION. Sure. Okay, listen. There are many problems with our modern world. We could sit here talking about them all day and into next week, there are so many. But here's one thing that we need to realize. Things could be so much worse, and by worse, I mean this creature could still exist. This animal existed somewhere around 250 million years ago, and while it looks more like a shark than anything else, scientists now know that it's actually a creature that is related more closely to chimeras, which are a fish that separated from the shark family about 400 million years ago. So why is this animal so scary and just terrible to look at? Well, that is due to the incredibly unsettling spiral saw formation of teeth that this creature had right on their lower jaw. Yeah, an orthodontist's dream, truly. It's also not like this creature was just born with the teeth that they had for the rest of their lives. No, of course not. They had teeth that could grow, and new teeth could even form. Imagine being in the ocean and you see a huge creature swim up to you that has 4 spiral saws for teeth. Yeah, no thanks. In our number 7 spot today, we have the deep sea dragonfish. These guys are a pretty strong contender for strangest looking animal on this list. These predatory fish use their fang-like teeth to grab onto their prey in their dark, cold, deep sea environment. They have no scales and instead slippery eel-like skin, which only adds to their creepiness level. Similar to an anglerfish, these guys have a little lighted barbel that hangs from its lower jaw to attract its prey towards it. These fish really use bioluminescence to their advantage, but they also have another less common ability. Firstly, since many of their prey are also bioluminescent, they have a special stomach that will ensure the light cannot be seen from inside of their stomach so as to not give away their position. And secondly, they're also able to produce a red glow. This glow is thought to perhaps be used to signal other dragonfish, but it is definitely used by them to illuminate and detect their prey. They are the only known fish that has the ability to both produce and see red light, as most fish can only see a more blue light. So while these guys are definitely very creepy to look at, they're also pretty interesting and talented. In our number 6 spot today, we have the JCOLOPTERUS. Okay, I've got 3 words for you. Giant sea scorpion. Yeah, remind me to never go into prehistoric oceans. This 8-foot-long arthropod lived in the water with its gross 2 large pinchers and claws, and honestly, it looks like something out of the movie Alien. These guys had segmented bodies, and they're actually the largest known arthropod to have ever existed here on Earth. They had multiple specialized limbs, and some of them even had spikes, like for example, their 18-inch spiked claw that was used to snatch fish as they passed by. It is said that some of these guys would crawl out of the water in order to mate, and sometimes shed their outer skin, and all I have to say is imagine finding an 8-foot-long molt of one of these creatures on the beach right before you're about to jump in for a swim. You wouldn't, right? I'd swear off all water after that. Not even drinking it anymore. In our number 5 spot today, we have the goblin shark. A goblin shark is sometimes called a living fossil because the rest of the family that this type of shark belongs to have actually gone extinct. These sharks have pink skin and a long snout that sticks out really far, and these really creepy teeth that are like nails. When these sharks were first discovered by humans in 1910, the guy who was researching them wrote that the new shark is certainly grotesque, and honestly, not much has changed since then. I'd definitely be inclined to agree. They usually grow to around 3 or 4 meters, which is 10 to 13 feet, but in 2000 there was one that was caught that was 6 meters or 20 feet long. These sharks tend to stay pretty deep in the ocean, with the adults swimming even deeper than the young ones, so the good news about that is they probably aren't much of a threat to humans. In our number 4 spot today, we have the KRONOSAURUS. This Cretaceous marine reptile is one that had an elongated head, a short neck, and a stiff body that was propelled by not just 1, but 2 sets of fins that helped propel it through the water and through strong currents in order to capture whatever prey it was after. These guys were somewhere around 30 to 40 feet in length, and they had many long, sharp, conical teeth, with some of them being enlarged to be fangs. So yeah, I mean, what more could you want in a terrifying sea creature? Along with the fossils found of these guys, experts have been able to determine some of the stuff they ate, and it includes turtles, as well as other pliosaurs, which these guys are a part of that genus, meaning they basically ate their own family. I'm just saying, the Meg might have some stiff competition when it comes to these guys. In our number 3 spot today we have stonefish. These fish are one of the most venomous known fish, and although they are primarily marine, some species are known to live in rivers as well. Most of these guys can be found in coral reefs near the tropical Pacific and Indian Oceans. The name of these fish comes from their camouflage color, which allows them to blend in with their surroundings, but unfortunately because they are so good at disguising themselves, swimmers may not notice or see them and then inadvertently step on them, which can cause a whole slew of issues. When a stonefish is disturbed, it will inject an amount of venom proportional to the amount of pressure it's feeling, and this venom is coming from the glands at the base of their needle-like dorsal fin. The sting of a stonefish is said to be extremely painful, and if left untreated, it can certainly be fatal. The poison within the venom that the stonefish possesses is a proteinaceous toxin called verrucotoxin. The symptoms of this poison include respiratory weakness, damage to the cardiovascular system, convulsions, and paralysis. Although there are many studies that have been done on this toxin, much about how it works and the exact mechanisms of it are not yet fully understood, which just places this already terrifying creature in a cloud of mystery. In our number 2 spot today we have the Leviathan. If we were to look at our ocean today, we of course would see sharks as one of the top predators that exist. I mean, some sharks are huge and they certainly know how to hunt, but they aren't the only scary creatures roaming the oceans. Sometimes killer whales make such a grand appearance that they even scare off some of the most terrifying sharks and make them flee for incredible distances. This is something that was also seen many years ago, I mean millions of years ago, during the time of the Megalodon, and that is thanks to a gigantic creature known as the Leviathan. If you are unfamiliar, this is a now extinct genus of macroraptorial sperm whale. It is believed that they could weigh around 100,000 pounds and reach up to 57 feet in length, and it's thought that their size is what helped repel other predators while helping them become the predator themselves. The Leviathan also had enormous teeth that reached over a foot in length, which is what gave them the title of largest bite of any tetrapod ever. In our number 1 spot today we have the long-armed squid. Listen, not all that terrifying, but they're just so creepy and gross. The big fin squid is not often seen, and thank goodness for that, because they are so unbelievably freaky. They can be found in many different oceans, but they live in the permanently dark zone of the ocean, around 1,219 meters or 4,000 feet deep in the sea. On November 11th, 2007, as an ROV was searching around the deep waters in the Gulf of Mexico, it was able to catch one of these guys on film. While there is still a ton that remains a mystery about these very elusive creatures, it is believed that they can grow to be around 23 feet long or over 7 meters. The real creepy stance that these guys have is when they hold their extremely long appendages perpendicular to their body, which creates like a sort of elbow look. I don't know, it just freaks me out. Imagine waking up and having a giant squid with elbows floating around your room. I know it's not gonna happen, but I'm just saying, that would be very scary. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Zuyo-Maru monster. This story is one that comes to us from 1977, and rather than an alive animal sighting, this one is actually this carcass that was found that we still aren't quite sure what it belongs to. The Zuyo-Maru carcass was one that was found by Japanese fishermen near New Zealand. Because it was so unique, it was taken to be analyzed, and while many have speculated that it was a basking shark, that has never been confirmed or proven. Considering the fact that it was definitely shark-like, but just not quite clear as to what exactly it was, is definitely interesting. In our number 9 spot today we have the sea creature. Back in both 1817 as well as 1819 there was a sea creature that visited the coast of Massachusetts, and it was seen by hundreds of people, but no one has been able to identify what it could have been for sure. The creature was said to be around 3 feet in diameter and around 50 feet long, and it is said that it moved similarly to how a whale or a dolphin might. The first sighting of this creature was when some fishermen spotted it, but the real panic began as the creature started to show itself closer to shore. To this day, some people swear that this was some sort of real sea monster, and others believe it was just a case of mass hysteria. What do you think? shark. In our number 8 spot today we have the prehistoric monster. Back in 1959, a fisherman named Tex Geddes and his friend James Gavin were boating somewhere just off of the coast of Scotland. It is said that during their time out to sea they encountered a sea monster that neither of them had seen before. They described its head as being sort of turtle shaped and that it was a quote hellish monster of prehistoric times, and said that it was breathing heavily through a quote large red gash of a mouth. Okay, not exactly a kind description, but definitely a bit of a terrifying one. I think it's important to bring up that we don't actually know what megalodons looked like. We have a sort of idea, but at the end of the day we only have fossils, jaws, and spines, and that doesn't leave us that much to work with. While it isn't quite clear what these two men saw for sure, and it's likely that we'll never know, whatever it was definitely wasn't just your average sea creature. In our number 7 spot today we have Dr. Gru. When we think of the tales of sea monsters and myths, we often think of the many serpent-like creatures that just may be lurking underneath the water. This is definitely a common theme, and in the 17th century there was a botanist who came up with a sort of explanation for these sea serpent sightings. It's important to note that this botanist was a very legitimate scientist who really worked to change basically everything we knew about plant anatomy, so when he came forth with this evidence and explanation, it rightfully caught people's attention. Basically, he had this specimen, which was a sample of skin that he said was from some sort of seal, but that it had a neck just as long as the rest of its body. Of course, this would explain a whole bunch of sea monster sightings, but in the end, the skin sample ended up completely disappearing, making any confirmation of the story or the animal's existence completely impossible. I know a megalodon isn't necessarily supposed to look like a seal with a long neck, but who's to say for sure that it doesn't? In our number 6 spot today we have the shipwreck. Back in 1909, the French steamer La Seine was out to sea when it collided with the British India steamer the Onda. A shipwreck is never good, but this one was particularly bad as, in heavy fog, the French ship sank in just 2 minutes. This of course left people stranded in the water, and I mean, you can probably see where this is going. In the aftermath of this wreck, while waiting for the rescue, there were 101 people who lost their lives from shark attacks. That's a lot of people. That is either a lot of sharks or a very few large ones. I mean, none of us were there, so it's hard to say for sure, but whatever really happened here, it's an absolutely horrifying tragedy. In our number 5 spot today we have the kayak encounter. Ida Parker and Kristen Orr were kayaking off of the coast of Plymouth in 2014 when they encountered a shark. This is truly a nightmare scenario, and it must have been absolutely terrifying. The pair, however, had actually set off with the intention of seeing a great white shark, and while it's likely that this is exactly what they encountered, they definitely did not expect what happened next. The two had heard of rumblings of a shark in the area that had swallowed a seal in one gulp, and this is what sparked their desire to head out on this journey. While out there, however, the shark began to attack their kayaks. In the end, both of them made it out alive, and when their kayaks were recovered, one was found with a huge bite mark in it. In our number 4 spot today we have the oldest shark attack. Considering the fact that the megalodon is said to have been extinct somewhere over 2 million years ago, even evidence that seems ancient to us is a lot more recent than what our current understanding of their timeline here on Earth would suggest. That is exactly why the discovery of what is speculated to be the world's oldest evidence of a shark attack is very interesting. This discovery came by way of a 3,000-year-old human skeleton that is marked with different gashes and puncture wounds. It is said that because of the volume of wounds, it makes it slightly easier to tell the story of what happened. This is because while researchers first believed that perhaps the wounds were caused by metal weapons, this could not explain why there were so many in certain parts of the body. Another telltale sign is how this skeleton was discovered in Japan, which at the time of this person's life, there weren't really any metal weapons at that point in history in Japan, which ruled out this theory entirely. They were also able to rule out other terrestrial carnivores, and that's when they turned to marine life to look for some more answers. Because of the time it's been, we obviously don't know what creature was involved in this attack for sure, but with the mass amount of wounds found on the skeleton, it was likely to be something large and terrifying. In our number 3 spot today we have snorkeling. Robert Pamperin and a friend, Gerald Lair, were snorkeling off of La Jolla Cave in California in 1959 when Robert was attacked by a shark. It is said to have all happened quite quickly, and Gerald was alerted to the distress when he heard Robert scream. Gerald turned and saw Robert unusually high in the water, and his mask was missing. At this point, Gerald dove under, and this is when he realized exactly what was going on. There was a shark that had Robert in its mouth up to his waist. Unfortunately, there was not much Gerald could do to stand up to this absolutely massive massive shark that he described as larger than your average great white. Robert sadly did not survive the event, and by the time rescuers arrived, they were only able to locate one of his fins. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Jersey Shore. Back in 1916, during the summer season, there were 5 different shark attacks that occurred over the span of 10 days that ended up in the deaths of 4 people. This wasn't something that had been seen before in the area, which of course left people speculating as to why. There was a heat wave in the area during the time, which likely led to more people being out enjoying summertime sort of activities, and maybe this attracted the shark, but in the end, no one knows for sure because no one even knows what kind of shark is responsible for the attacks in the first place. Luckily, this didn't go on to become a continuous trend, and whatever shark this was went on its merry way, or perhaps found another food source, or whatever, but this series of attacks definitely kept the public on edge for the weeks and months surrounding. In our number 1 spot today, we have the USS Indianapolis. This is a story that has been considered the worst shark attack in history, which is definitely a horrific thing to think about. In 1945, the USS Indianapolis was an unescorted US warship that was sailing in the Pacific when it was struck by a Japanese torpedo. This had no problem tearing the ship in two, which meant that 900 sailors were now floating in the ocean waiting for rescue. Over the next 5 days, nearly 600 men lost their lives due to shark attacks. I said this about the other one that was similar to this, and I'll say it again. That's either a group of sharks or a very few large, very hungry ones. From the survivors' accounts of what happened over the course of those days, it seemed like an absolutely nightmare situation. This is exactly why this has gone on to be called one of the worst shark attacks in history.